So what are the best 5 aggression allies in Marvel Champions? Well, I'm Dylan from All You Can Board, and today I'm going to give you my list and what I think are the best 5 aggression allies and why, but I have to preface this by obviously saying that this is subjective because Marvel Champions is kind of a subjective game. Usually with card games, they are competitive, and so it comes down to which cards are the best and which combination of cards are going to be the most powerful and win you the most games. But when you're playing a cooperative game and one that is actually played so often solo, it's not always just about what is the most powerful, because if it's not fun, why are you sitting there solo playing it, right? You want to have a deck that's fun. You want to make your own decks. You want to see if you can come up with a crazy combination that uses only basic cards to beat a villain. You know, like there's so many parts of Marvel Champions that are different from other competitive card games, so it's totally fine if we have completely different top 5 aggression allies because our experiences are different. I think that's what is so much fun about discussing Marvel Champions, is that people play different heroes. Allies are different or better in different situations. An ally that might seem weak here and overall maybe generally weak could be super powerful against this one villain. So just so you know, this list is kind of from a general sense. I know that some allies that might not make this list could be really useful or really powerful in certain situations, and I know that some of these allies might be weaker in specific situations, but I'm crafting this list that it's sort of a general sense. What are the top 5 aggression allies in a general sense that have the most usability and, you know, are the most powerful across the board in multiple categories most of the time? Obviously not all the time. So again, this is my list. Let me know in the comments if you disagree. Let me know what your lists are in the comments. I would love to hear from them. We're gonna start at 5, we're gonna go to 1. Let's jump right in. Okay, so coming in at number 5 is Valkyrie. Now this was an ally that came in the Thor pack. It is a 3-cost ally with 3 health, has 1 thwart, 2 attack, and its ability is response. After Valkyrie enters play, deal 2 damage to a minion, but 3 damage instead if you paid for this card using a lightning resource. So it was a close call between Valkyrie and Jane Foster's Thor for me. Personally, as a character and as the artwork on the card, all those things considered, I actually prefer Jane Foster Thor. I just found that in my experience, Valkyrie is a little bit more useful. Jane Foster costs an extra resource, has an extra health, but the damage that she can do by having paid for her with a fist resource is only to the villain. In my experience, it's not that is not useful. It's just that usually being able to target a minion has been a little bit more useful because you generally have a lot of really strong ways to deal with the villain. You know, all the heroes come with really powerful cards and attack cards in their decks or in their, you know, base starting cards for the hero. You have ways that you're planning or have built your deck to take care of the villain. That's the whole point of the game. But sometimes minions taking care of them, you want specific cards, and Valkyrie kind of slots in that way, whereas Jane Foster's Thor does not. It's targeting the villain. So it was very, very close for me. The reason Valkyrie makes this list beyond that is just that there's great value there. So if you look at it, a good way to look at cards, and I've seen this from a few different people. This is obviously not my philosophy. I've just heard this around forums. I've heard people talk about this, is that generally for a resource, when it comes to dealing damage, you want to be able to do 2 damage for that resource. That's kind of baseline average. So when you're evaluating a card, you can look at it as, you know, for Valkyrie, she's a 3-cost card and she does 2 attack on each swing. So if you do the full 3 swings, because she takes a consequential damage every time, you're getting 6 damage for 3 resources, which is average value. Every 1 resource should get you around 2 damage. Now, obviously, that is a loose rule because with allies, you're not always going to do that damage. Sometimes being able to soak up a hit that could have been for 8 is way more valuable than dealing 2 damage. So that always has to be factored in. I don't like using that rule as a hard rule, but it's just something to sort of use as a baseline as you start to evaluate these cards. So Valkyrie, all things considered, has average stats, but then it has the added ability of potentially doing 3 damage to a minion. So the value is there. She's not over the top powerful, but she is useful, and I get a lot of use out of Valkyrie when I have her in situations where there's minions I need to deal with, which is usually when I'm slotting her in the first place. Many villain decks have minions, but if you have several coming out very frequently, especially if they're at like 3 health, 2 health, being able to pick one off with Valkyrie is very useful. So all things considered, Valkyrie is not an overpowered hero. This isn't a super, super powerful hero. There's obviously not a whole ton of aggression allies to choose from. So she does slot in at 5 for a reason. There are more powerful ones that slot in above her, but I'm happy to play Valkyrie, and I have had many decks that have had success with Valkyrie in them. So that is number 5. Let's jump on to number 4. Okay, coming in at number 4 is Brawn. So Brawn is a 3-cost ally that comes from the Hulk hero pack. It has 5 health, 1 thwart, 1 attack, and the response is that after Braun attacks, remove 1 threat from a scheme. There's honestly not a whole ton to say about Braun. This is just a solid hero that isn't overly flashy, but is just really reliable and has tons of versatility. So generally, you're probably not going to be using the thwart on Braun. There may be specific situations where you've boosted the thwart, or there's another reason you want to use the thwart over the attack, but essentially attacking with Braun gets you a free thwart. And that's where the value comes in. If you evaluate Braun based on the stats, for 3 cost, you can do a max of 5 damage that also ties with it 5 threat removal. So that is a really good value card, but obviously being an ally with 5 health, it's a great blocker. So anytime you put on an ally, you want to be able to reliably have a blocker. And if you have an ally that has no use, no ability, it's just there, or it had a trigger effect when it comes into play, that's all it's there for. It's essentially to block for you, or to take off a status card or something like that. So Braun being able to take multiple hits for you, but also be able to reliably split a damage to take off a status card or do a single damage to a minion, whatever the case may be, but also remove a single threat, is really, really good versatility and is just a solid ally all around. Again, nothing flashy. There's also honestly not a whole ton more to say about Braun, but just something that you're never going to be upset that it's in the deck or it's coming out. It's a reliable card, and I think you'll see a lot of use from it. So that is number 4, Braun. Okay, number 3. This is an exciting one for me. I personally really love this hero. If it was just based on which are my favorite aggression heroes, this might be number 1 just from the amazing games that I've had with this card. This is Hulk, Bruce Banner's Hulk. So 2 cost ally that has 5 health and 3 attack. Amazing base stats. No thwart. You're not thwarting with Hulk, are not even allowed to thwart with Hulk. So the ability here is where things get shaken up. It is a forced response. After Hulk attacks, you discard the top card of your deck, and if that card's printed resource has, and then every resource will have a different effect. So the fist is the best one. You get to deal an additional 2 damage to an enemy. It can be a different enemy, or you can basically do a swing of 5 instead of 3, which if you hit that every single time, if you had the best luck ever and you hit that every time and you attack 5 times with Hulk, that means for 2 cost, you've done 25 damage, which is absolutely bonkers. Now, I know you cannot rely on that. It's hard. You shouldn't even really evaluate the card that way, but if we're looking at the total ceiling of what the best the card can produce is, that's pretty incredible. So just knowing that's there is worth mentioning, I think. Beyond that, the lightning resource will deal 1 damage to each character if that is the one that's discarded. This can be good, or it can be bad, or it can kind of fall somewhere in the middle. If you're against a villain that has a lot of minions, being able to peg off a bunch of them, potentially either killing them or just doing a bunch of damage across them, can be really useful. If you're playing a deck or with someone that has a lot of allies in play, you're dealing 1 damage to every single ally, likely killing off 1 or 2 of them as well. This has been one that's up in the air. Sometimes I have loved drawing the lightning resource. Other times it's been devastating, and I've had a couple allies where it just picks them all off and it just completely ruins the game plan I had. But it's one that can be positive. The other one is the mind resource, which is discard Hulk. The worst one, you basically just lose Hulk. So if you draw that, you could play Hulk and do his very first attack and lose Hulk because of the discard, which essentially means all you did was pay 2 costs for 3 damage. And you lost a valuable ally that had 5 health and could have blocked for you. That's the devastating one, the mind resource. And then finally, the wild resource is all of the above. You will do 2 damage to an enemy, you'll do 1 damage to each character, and then you'll discard Hulk. So generally, this is a very random ally that can somewhat be controlled by how you build the deck. Now, the reason I love Hulk so much and the reason I slot him in at number 3 is it allows for creative deck building. And not creative in the sense that you have a bunch of wild possibilities. You're kind of focused on one thing, but you can do it in creative ways. So if you're going to be playing Hulk and you're going to reliably be trying to get him out, you'd be best suited to play him in a deck where you have a lot of fist resources or lightning resources, and hopefully not a lot of mind resources, but especially the fist resources. I have had many, many successful games where Hulk has been the decider, the difference maker in us either winning or losing, or just having an easy game compared to a very tough slog. So as soon as Hulk hits a couple fists and you get multiple turns with him, even if you do 2 attacks with Hulk and you get a fist on both of them, you've done 10 damage for 2 cost, and you potentially still have an ally in play who can block for you, or he has already blocked for you. Again, you can completely rely on that, but I wouldn't say it's ridiculous to think that you can get 2 positive results with Hulk out of that. And again, the lightning resource also can be not bad as well and can be pretty decent. So the power ceiling is there. It's worth it, I think, enough that the downside it's worth it to risk it. And even when you have that really bad showing and Hulk gets discarded right off the bat, or you pick off some allies you didn't want, it's usually not a game changer, whereas his upside can be a complete game changer. So I personally love Hulk. I'm usually not a fan of a lot like huge RNG cards, huge luck-based cards, but in Hulk's case, I just love playing them. It's always exciting, and it always leads to really, really memorable moments, and that is why Hulk is my number 3. All right, coming in at number 2 is Wasp Janet Van Dyne. So this is a newer card. It came in the Wasp Hero Pack. It is a 0-cost ally that has 0 health, 1 thwart, 3 attack. Each of them gives you a consequential damage. Wasp will get +1 hit point for each Pim counter on her. So how do you get Pim counters on her? Interrupt when Wasp enters play. Place 1 Pim counter on her to a max of 3 for each lightning resource you overpaid for Wasp's cost. And because she costs 0, any lightning resources you pay will be an overpay. So Wasp can be very insanely good, and it depends on which kind of decks you're slotting her into. So it is very deck dependent, but I love her because of how powerful she can be. So the example I will use, and I use this in the Wasp card review, if you've already watched that, is Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel aggression decks are the cozy little home for Wasp's ally card, because if you use that card that Captain Marvel has, which I'm going to forget the name of, I always do, but I'll put it up on the screen, that is a single card and gives you 3 lightning resources. For a single card, you can pay for Wasp, and she'll have 3 health and do 3 damage on each hit, which is a max of 9 damage, and you paid a single card. That is obviously very powerful, the same way that Hulk can be very, very powerful, just a little bit more reliable, because all you have to do is just have the right deck for Wasp to slot into. Even if you are not playing her in Captain Marvel, a deck like Iron Man, or a character like Iron Man, with all of his energy needs, and with the energy resource card, the basic card, being able to potentially get her out for 2 cards in a deck that is full of lightning resources. There's so much potential here, and it's so easy to know which decks to slot Wasp into, and it might not be universal across the board, but even if you were in a deck that wasn't Captain Marvel, and you are in a situation where you didn't find energy and you had to pay 3 separate cards, it might be hard to find 3 lightning resources in your hand at once. But if you do, even at a full 3 cards, a 3 cost for 3 health, that's going to do 9 damage total. If you attack every single time, they can also be a blocker. The value is still there. The value is absolutely there. The only hindrance is, of course, you have to use lightning resources. But overall, I think Wasp is such a great card, such a great ally. It's so much fun to use, and it feels so good when you pull her off at maximum value, especially in Captain Marvel. If you haven't tried her out yet, or it's a card you have slept on before, or you just don't play Captain Marvel a lot, I'd really recommend try playing an aggression Captain Marvel deck, slot Wasp in there, and play a couple games till you hit that huge combo. Even if you hit it with energy, you'll still feel the power of it. It feels really good, and you still have a reliable ally out that can take a hit for you in a pinch. Even doing the 6 damage with 2 hits or 2 swings, and then taking a hit to kill off Wasp at a single cost or a single card with Captain Marvel is still unbelievable value. So a really, really good card. One of my personal favorites. I'm not sure totally what the community's thoughts are on Wasp and where everyone else sees that she slots in. I just know that I personally love her a lot, and I really, really enjoy playing her. So that is my number 2, Wasp Janet Van Dyne. All right, coming in at number 1, my personal, what I think is the best aggression ally currently in the game, and that is Sentry, which is a card that comes in Hulk, the Hulk Hero Pack. It is a 4-cost, 5 health ally that has 2 thwart and 3 attack. The forced response on Sentry is after Sentry enters play under your control, deal yourself 1 encounter card. So the reason that I think Sentry is so good is that the value that you're getting for a cost of 4 resources, with it having 5 health and doing 3 damage a hit, is a max of 15 damage for 4 cost, which is bonkers. And you have a reliable blocker as well that can take a couple hits if you needed to as well. And the only downside is being dealt 1 encounter card. Now, obviously those encounter cards could be horrible. It could be the worst situation and it really screw up your game and everything that's going on. But that being said, usually you can deal with it okay. I would say it's not the end of the world to get dealt a single encounter card. And I'm even more excited about the potential for this card as we go into the future, because we're seeing the design space open up and new creative ways that the designers are utilizing these cards and utilizing the rules. And even a character like Star-Lord that's coming into the game that wants to be dealt encounter cards, or at least is going to frequently be dealt encounter cards to power up its attacks, his attacks. Perhaps Sentry is an aggression card that in an aggression Star-Lord deck easily slots in because you're already being dealt encounter cards and you're already fine with that and used to it. There's also cards you can use that will negate encounter cards, or let you draw another one. There's ways you can control the situation to make this even less impactful of a downside if you really need to. But even without mitigating it, even just leaving it for what it is, it's such a powerful ability, or such a powerful card for such a, I would say relatively minor downside. The 15 potential damage, and that's not even, I haven't even talked about the fact that you still have 2 thwart in this card too. These stats are crazy. You can thwart for 10, or you can do a 15 damage, or you can do a mix, do 6 damage and 6 damage and 6 thwart. Like, the flexibility's there. It's a reliable blocker. It does a ton of damage, removes a lot of threat. Overall, like, there's not really much bad I can say about Sentry. So far, in my opinion, it is the strongest aggression ally that has been introduced into the game. And a side note, I actually personally really love the Sentry character in the comics. I actually don't know if that's a controversial thing. I don't know what the overall consensus of the character of Sentry is. I got into comics actually relatively late. I didn't really grow up on Marvel comics. It was something that, I read them here and there, watched the cartoons and stuff. But I really got into the comics when I was an adult. And Sentry is just a character I always really, really loved, and how they inserted him into the universe and stuff. So actually, let me know in the comments, is Sentry, what do you guys think of Sentry? Is he a character you like? Is he a popular character? Is he a character that's generally considered to be unpopular? Let me know, because I'm actually really curious, and just let me know if you like Sentry. But anyways, back to the card. I love it. I think it's an obvious choice for number 1. I wouldn't be surprised if someone else had slotted them a little bit differently, and I don't necessarily think it's like the no-brainer pick, but in my opinion, it's just really hard to pick another ally over Sentry that will get the most functional use across multiple decks, and is just, competes with this kind of power level. I think the power level is just very, very high for Sentry. So that is my number 1, and those are my top 5 aggression allies in the game. Obviously, like I mentioned at the beginning, this is a subjective list in the sense that I will have a different experience with Marvel Champions than you might have, and we are going to play different decks, and we're going to have, favorite allies and favorite heroes we want to play that maybe the hero you're playing in the style you're playing doesn't have use for Sentry for some reason, or doesn't have use for Hulk, and those cards just never slot into your top 5. So that's totally fine. But having said that, let me know in the comments, which are your top 5 aggression allies? I would love to hear. And also let me know which aspect you want me to do next, because I want to do another one for each of these aspects. That is protection, justice, leadership, and basic, and also all of the hero allies, the ones that are come in, the 15 cards that are in each hero pack. I want to do a video covering all those as well. Which one would you like to see next? I'll take a look in the comments and I'll see what everyone's voting on, and maybe that'll influence which one I do next. I have a couple that I really want to get to, but I can be influenced, so just let me know. But yeah, let me know in the comments. I've asked you for a whole lot of stuff in the comments, so I just love to hear from you guys. I love to talk with you. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed another Marvel Champions piece of content. I'm going to have a whole bunch, and we're getting very close to Galaxy's Most Wanted, which means we're going to have videos on Rocket and Groot, as well as the entire campaign box and what I think of it. So thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.